Hey guys, I hope everybody can hear me. I'm about to get ready to go live. I'm gonna give it a minute or two so Facebook can start telling y'all that I am here. And we are going to get started tonight. So, first off, I want to welcome everybody to my group. I love this group so much. Um, Even if some of y'all be acting like y'all shy, I love to teach people and show people how to create podcasts. And today is day 4. Now, by this time, anybody who was here during the first week should have been completely done. But I realized that, people be having other stuff they doing in their life and people like to take their time, and that's fine. So I'm going to just keep going until I don't have nothing else to tell you about podcasting. Plus, there's new people coming in on a rotation, and they got to all catch up. But remember, you guys, I am not playing no games. You are in this group if you are ready to start a podcast. Not if you're curious about it, if you're just wondering about it. You really need to take the steps, create that strategy, and do that execution to make sure you get this podcast together. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So, tonight's complete overview is, first off, I am just going to go over a few things about the stuff I've uploaded to the group over the last week or so. Maybe you haven't been in a Facebook group before. Maybe this is your first time actually doing like the student version, because this is what like kind of like supposed to be like a course version of a group or whatever the case may be. So if you never used it before, what I'm going to do is go over everything that's going on in this group. So if you are new here, you know how to navigate the bars at the top. So when you first join the group, you see the little meme that's pointing at the top and you see the little bar. And there's two important bars that you need to know. That is the files and the guides. So first I want to go over the files so you can understand what is in there and what I'm going to be putting in there over the next few weeks or whatever the case may be. So let's go over the files. So the first file that you will see in the list, depending on what order you pull it in, is the Createcast podcast script. Now, I think it was either episode 2 or 3. I discussed having a script. And the reason why this is important is because sometimes when we do podcasts, we're like, oh, we already know what we're going to talk about. I'm the expert on this. Let me just start spitting. And you can do that. A lot of people actually do that. But the reason why I created this little podcast script for everybody in here is because when you are a new podcaster, sometimes you tend to, be excited about it at first and then be like, I can't think of nothing else. And you start to pod fade. And we talked about pod fading. We don't want you to pod fade. That's when you get super excited about a podcast, you start recording, and then you don't record an episode for like weeks, months. And I only know this, you guys, because what? I did it myself. I pod faded when I did my very first podcast. And after the 4th episode, I just never did it again. So I'm trying to help you guys not do the things and not do the mistakes that I did in the beginning. So when you do this script, you can pre-think, pre-brainstorm those episodes and kind of jot down those key points that you want to hit. So if you've seen a video I posted a few days ago, I was kind of showing you guys an example of how you use the podcast script along with recording. And I had it on my screen and I kind of was reading from it verbatim or whatever the case may be while recording. And this is what you want to do. You never want to read anything too much word for word because you're going to sound like a robot. Even broadcasters on TV don't always read word for word. They have those segments where they like, freestyle it. You know what the story is. Just, read what you know. So use those scripts. You go right at the top to files and you can download the Createcast podcast script. That's where you write the title of your podcast. You write a mini description because you're going to need that description for when you sign up for your podcast hosting site. So type in a mini description. Then you want to kind of write down a nice little summary in that same description section of, who you are, what this podcast is about, what's the value of this podcast. And you write that information down, you can better prepare yourself for your introductory episode. And so on. As you go down, you see I created 3 sections: beginning, middle, and end. For when you do your podcast episodes, you know what points you want to hit. You could type in there, whether or not you're going to have a guest and what questions you're going to have to ask the guest. But you really want to try to use this guide. And you can always duplicate sheets. That's the beauty about having a digital podcast script guide. And also, you can mark things on the calendar, what days you're going to record, what days you're going to batch record, or whatever the case may be. So definitely make sure you guys use those files. The next file in that folder right there is called the podcast list 2. It's a podcast list 1 and 2. They're pretty much the same list. The only difference is I added a little bit more things to the podcast list 2 because I forgot to add some interfaces and some pop filters. I didn't get this pop filter till like last year, and I had my podcast gear for at least 2-3 years. And trust and believe me, I am saving you right now by telling you to get a pop filter early, because my first time editing my podcast, you hear them pops. This pop filter is supposed to stop that, but I didn't have one. So everything I said sounded like that. And I think I edited a 20-minute podcast for like 80 years. And that's really what made me pop fade, because I was like, ain't nobody about to be up here editing all this mess. No. So get you a pop filter, get you a good mic, and you won't have to worry about all those breathing segments. We're cutting out all those P's and pops and or whatever. Okay. So that list gives you a list of all the gear that I've seen online. That's the highest rated gear on Amazon, from the cheapest price to the highest price. And trust and believe, short story, I bought a $10 mic before. It came from China or something, but I'm like, this a good deal. It had 3.5 stars. Kind of went against what I usually do. If it ain't 5 stars, I ain't messing with it. But this is like 3.5 stars. And I was like, nah. But I was buying it for my Boys and Girls Club kids, so it was a good little cheap mic to have, and it was the worst. So cheap mics aren't always the greatest mics. You would do better just recording on your phone. And I even ended up doing that sometimes when I was teaching the kids how to podcast. I was just like, forget this cheap mic. We about to use a cell phone and record this. So that's the list of all the gear. If you are interested in buying gear, getting gear, again, I'm not affiliated with Amazon. These aren't affiliate links. This is straight up from my podcast wish list, and I just print it out as a PDF and upload it, because sometimes when you're looking for mics, it can be overwhelming and you're like, what mic this and what mic that. So this is why I put these things in a file, so that it can make it easier for you when you're trying to shop for your gear. And trust and believe, I've had people randomly inbox me in the past about it, and it's just easier that I keep a list so I can have it on hand when people need it. Next up on that list is the Createcast Checklist. Now, I created this checklist compiled with not only the stuff that I do when I create a podcast, stuff that I've had to tell other people to do, and researching what other people, what other companies tell people they should do. Kind of combined it together for something real basic and simple, but you definitely want to use that checklist. Again, you could take all these files. I would say take all these files, put it on a little separate folder in your hard drive, on your Google hard drive, and then just have all your files in there. So anything you need, anytime you need to reference links or reference, where to get a mic or reference anything, you can just go to your little podcast folder, get your little stuff, look at it, type in it, or whatever the case may be. So this checklist is basically a checklist you would use before you start to officially go on air and officially become live in the podcast space. Next up on that list is a PDF that is basically I call it the free best audio editor file. So what that is a PDF that I found online and research some of the mics that they not mics research some of the editing software. So a lot of times people sway away from podcasting because they're worried about editing and audio editing and woo woo woo. But listen, let me tell you something. If you could cut and paste the comments that you see on Facebook, you can cut and delete audio tracks. It's nothing magical to it. It's not rocket science. It's literally a bar of audio, and you can see the different wavelengths. And if you see a wavelength like, oh, I cursed right there, or oh, I breathe, my breath was too loud there, you literally cut in the front, cut in the back, delete, gone. So if you cut and paste, you can cut and paste and delete, and you can edit audio. Trust me when I say this. You got this and you can do this, because this list right here is giving you a list of all of the free audio editing software. One of the most popular ones is Audacity. Sounds like Audition. It's Audacity. It is a free open source audio editing thing. Anybody can use it. It's free. I particularly only use Adobe Audition. One, because it comes with my package. But if you just want to get Adobe Audition yourself, again, not an affiliate link, just I love Adobe Audition. It's so easy. It's user friendly. You select, you can remove background noise, fix your audio, whatever the case may be. I learned how to remove siren noises, whatever, because when you're recording a podcast in the hood, sometimes there's gonna be an ambulance. So yes, an ambulance. Okay. So we're going to drop a link right in the comments so you guys can kind of even look at Adobe Audition. And it's a free trial there. You sign up for that free trial, edit and play around with the editing software, and edit all your 3 or 4 of your first episodes before you feel like, okay, I'm going to do as much as I can with this free trial. And then, it is what it is. But it is worth it. It comes out to be about $21 a month. But if you can side hustle something, you can always make up for that. It's just, small investments here and there. But like I said, a lot of people use the Audacity, which is a free download online. And there's plenty of videos that also teach people how to use Audacity. But I am going to be giving people a live tutorial, I'm thinking, or maybe a recorded one, maybe, of how I edit a podcast episode. So that definitely is something that's going to be coming. So those are all your links. That is in the top right. If you don't see it on the bar, you hit the little down arrow. It's a drop down list, and it says PDFs, files, and all that stuff is there for you. Keep them. That's for you. That's how you make a podcast. It's all there for you. Now, I'm going to go over the guides real quick. Again, this is for people that maybe have not finished going through the guides yet, or you are working on it, and maybe you just want to kind of understand. So I'm just going to do a really quick overview of what the guides is. So guides used to be called units, and you could kind of look at it as learning modules. So if you ever did an online class, or if you ever been in school before, every time there's a test or a quiz, you do it and you click I'm done, or you click OK. And that's what these modules are. When you designate your Facebook group as a learning thing, or whatever the case may be, educational, they give you these guides. So what I have done is organized everything that I do in this group into specific guides so that you can keep track of what you've done, what you haven't done, what you watch, what you didn't watch, if you downloaded something or not. And so the reason why I organized it that way is because there's going to be different waves of people coming in. So when they come in, if they want to catch up and if they want to get right to it, without having to search all over the internet, how do I make a podcast? How do I make an intro? How do I edit audio? How do I do this? They could just come right to this group, click on the guides, and just go through the steps. So the first guides is basically all the links, internet resources that are ever shared under all of the videos. So from day one, when I was talking about, choosing your podcast hosting site and the difference between a hosting site and a distributor, all those links and all that information Any links that I ever share under any video is in the guide 1. So under guide 1, you're going to see all the links I ever share. And those are outside resources, the outside links. If you click on them, you can be like, okay, I got you. You got to look at it as notes, and you can even save it as a PDF. A lot of people don't know that you can save websites as PDFs, because I do it all the time, because it's good to have the reference, because sometimes you can't always go back and Google stuff, and then it gets to a point where you got like, I don't know, 375 bookmarks, and you ain't got time to be searching for that bookmark. So you can save stuff as a PDF and organize it on your hard drive, or organize it in your Google hard drive podcast folder. The second guide 2, that guide is basically all the videos that I've done, all the live videos that I do every Saturday at 8 o'clock. Write it in your calendar. Every Saturday at 8 o'clock, I am here talking to you, recording this video right here with you. Right? I just want to make sure that's not on. Okay. So that's number 2. All the videos. This video that I'm doing right now is actually going to be going in guide 2 tonight. So if you missed this video, or if you're watching a replay, you can hit replay at the bottom. And you guys know I always answer questions. Any questions you ask, it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. I might answer a question in my sleep. If you ask a question, I will answer it at my earliest convenience. No problem. I got you. Like I said, my mission is to teach 100 people how to podcast this year, and I am not playing. Okay? So guide number 3 is basically a guide that's all about audio editing. Anything that's dealing with audio editing, or the microphones, because I did a whole video about microphones. So if you are still slightly not understanding the difference between this 5 or 6 different types of microphones, from canoid to condenser to USBs to XLRs, there is a guide and a video under guide 3 that's telling you about that, and different videos that I uploaded on how to edit audio, how you can do it right on your iPhone, right in that voice recorder. You can record your voice, you could do cut and paste in there, and then you can send it, airdrop it right to your laptop. Okay. And finally, guide 4, again at the top, guide 4 is going to be all about promoting in social media for your podcast. It is not there yet, but it will be there, because next week we're going to talk about promoting, how to promote, how to get your podcast out there, what you should do to promote, creating social pages if that's the route you want to do, or creating a landing page or a Facebook, a WordPress page if that's what you're doing to do, whatever the case may be. And so when I finish doing that, and I have all the guides to that, PDFs or whatever I put together for that, we're going to put that there, even a social media calendar, and we're going to put that there for you. So if you guys want an easy way to get to the post, I'm going to drop the links in the comments. I have a link to the post files. That's going to be the first link. And then the second link is going to be a link directly to the guides. That's just in case you want to click on it. It will pop open in another window. And that's where you can know what I'm talking about. Because I've been a community manager over a few Facebook groups, I know that sometimes people are just still like, I don't see it. I don't know where it's at. Where can it be? So I'm making it easy for you, and I'm just going to drop the links that's going to send you directly to the guides and directly to the files. Now, there's something that I really, really, really want to talk to you guys about. It's a really serious topic, you guys. It's really serious, and I really need to talk about this. You ready? You ready, Chris? Video podcasting is not a thing. And this might be a little ranty, but I need to say this. Video podcasting isn't a thing. Okay. They have these ads I've been seeing on my Facebook timeline, and they're saying, start your video podcast today. It's not a thing. Then I have people on my timeline, 1 or 2 people, that's like, come on my video podcast. I have a uncle who swear he has a video podcast, but it's in a private group and they're recording in a barbershop in a private group, that's it. And you can't comment on it and you can't see it unless you're in a private group. Listen, video podcast isn't a thing, and that's the last time I'm going to say it. A video podcast came about because when podcasting first came out, Apple platform, remember I told you guys, where did podcast get its name? Broadcast and iPods, right? So that's where podcasting got its name. When they first came out, they thought they was going to do this video platform and people were going to listen to you talk about a topic, and they had all these videos. I think the only person they worked for at the time was Pat Flynn, which if you guys know who he is, fine. If you don't, you can easily Google Pat Flynn. He's very well known in the podcast space. But if you watch his YouTube channel now, he has continued on with his video podcasting, but that's because he is popular, but also he has a actual podcast that's on the phone. So let me tell you the difference between a podcast and what people think is a video podcast. Nothing should be used with the word podcast behind it if it doesn't have an RSS feed, okay? When you are recording something and it's going directly to YouTube, that's not a podcast. That's a YouTube video with you talking. It's a talking heads video, what we would call in the broadcast world. That is not a video podcast. That is not a podcast. It does not become a podcast until you are on a podcast hosting platform, which YouTube is not. YouTube does not provide anybody RSS feed, and YouTube will bury that video, and YouTube will block you from getting listeners. If you want to record yourself doing a podcast, or maybe you get a special interview with somebody, what you do is you record it just for the snippets. You record it for the good parts. If you started arguing, or if you end up getting, I don't know, some famous TikToker that went viral, or if you had a really good discussion with a mental health person, I don't know, whatever it was, if it was good interview, then you break up the segments and you use YouTube to promote just your podcast. So therefore they listen to a small part of it. They're like, oh, I think this is a good podcast. Then they look into the body of your video and they click that link and they actually go to Apple or Spotify to actually listen to the full episode. The only time you're going to see somebody with a video podcast is people who have, you know, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, $10,000, 10,000 downloads an episode. They're with networks or whatever the case may be, because those people are leveraging their audience to use YouTube as a second, a second audience for get money. So they get money on a podcast on an RSS feed, and they get money for YouTube ads. Just starting out, just brand new, this is not what you're doing. Especially if you are just recording a podcast on Facebook, or just recording a podcast on YouTube and recording yourself talking in the camera. That's not a podcast. It is not a podcast until you rip the audio, right? And upload it to a podcast hosting website that's either free or that you have paid for. Now, my rant is over, you guys. I'm okay now. But I just want to make sure you guys understand that when you put full length videos of you talking on the mic, and your podcast just dropped on Tuesday and it's a month in and you don't have a lot of listeners, because you're going to know your analytics. No, YouTube is going to bury it. It's going to pull your listeners down. And you want to at least make sure you got your RSS feed. Now, if you got your RSS feed and you got your podcast on a platform, record all you want to. But at the end of the day, you're going to be making yourself work harder, not smarter. Okay, in the beginning, you want to focus on recording. You want to focus on good audio. You want to focus on good, valuable content. Okay, you don't want to have to worry about doing YouTube too, because YouTube not making you no money yet, unless you already got a profitable channel that is, doing 4,000, 5,000 views a video. You're getting paid on YouTube already. If that's the case, then you could do a shorter version or a full version of your podcast, and then you want to probably add in some B-roll. But here's the thing about recording your podcast and putting it online. Sometimes, it's kind of like the patting your head and rubbing your stomach. Patting your head and rubbing your stomach. Sometimes when you are recording yourself and you're recording a podcast, you might say words like, look at this. Can y'all see this? Did you see that? Man, this is crazy. Y'all gotta see this video. Saying stuff like that, you're basically throwing that audio in the garbage because you're speaking to a camera as if people can see it. But if you pull that audio for our RSS feed, people driving in their car is gonna be like, what? I can't see nothing. This is audio. So you want to make sure you do not make things complicated for yourself in the beginning. Do what you do. If you're going to record yourself while you act like the camera ain't there, like this. Hello, this is such and such a podcast, and act like you don't see yourself, okay? Or make faces at the camera, be a character or something like that. Pull in some B-roll. If you're going to do a video podcast, make it entertaining, but it's not called a video podcast unless you also have an RSS feed where you have uploaded the audio version only on a podcast platform. If you understand what I'm saying. Again, if you're listening to this later, you listen to this now, and you are still confused on that, let me know. I will explain it in complete detail, or I will upload some files for you. Okay? So, you won't get any money when you do a video podcast. You're going to lower your listener engagement, and you're just wasting more. You're going to have to need more money, more equipment, because you're going to need lights. Like I got all these lights here. I got 3 lights here. I got HD camera. I got cell phone camera. I got DSLR. Like, you're going to waste your money. All you need is something to record, and that's it. Worry about the video podcasting when you get real big and you get a whole production team, or what I like to call a money team. When you get those people in your corner, that's what you want to do. Okay, so all that's over. Let's chat a little bit about your podcast. So if you've been in this group for a minute now, you should have at least done some type of brainstorming, y'all. Like, I don't want to have to, like, put you in a corner, or, I don't know, call you out. But you should have at least brainstorm your podcast, wrote down some possible titles of a podcast, some topics that you want to talk about. What's going to be your niche? I like to say niche. What's going to be your niche? Whatever the case may be, should have at least started some type of brainstorm if you have been here since day one, because the people just coming in and they already working on a podcast icon, they gonna really make you look bad, and you don't want to look bad. You wanna be like the OG. They can't be coming in and they already starting their podcast and you ain't started on yours. So podcasts don't have to be about one particular topic. So I'm just going to tell you guys a few things just so you won't be discouraged. And you're like, what am I a podcast about? What am I a podcast about? Don't worry about everybody else. Think about what you know how to do. Okay. Podcasts don't have to be about one particular topic. It could just be about you. It could be a real talk with Lindy Lou. It could be my love for life with Melissa Chu. Like, I'm making up stuff off the top of my head, but your podcast can literally be about whatever you want to talk about. It could be about anything from entertainment. Maybe you want to talk about entertainment news, trending news. You can call it My Twitter Timeline by Jamie Walker. Like, your podcast can be whatever you want to make it be. And the more creative, the more different it is from everybody else's, the better. Okay. You can be, it could do a health podcast. And these are podcasts that I always think about in my head. Like, if I was in that field, I would do that type of podcast. You could do a health podcast, faith-based podcast. It's really a big space. Like Christian podcasts, and anybody who's spiritual, those type of podcasts, those self-care podcasts, the self-care, mental health, a lot of people to interview in those spaces. And I always say, I made a complete video about why it's really, really important that you should create a podcast with your kids if that's something they want to do. And I'm going to say 2 of my main reasons why I said creating a podcast with your kid is a good idea is because, 1, it helps them learn how to speak and research. You speak. The more you speak, the better you speak because you read stuff, and the more you read, you talk better. You know more words, right? Build your confidence, but also at the same time, it gives your child a chance to enter the digital space anonymously. Okay, a lot of people are real iffy and itchy about, I don't want my kid on the internet. Cool, put them on a podcast. Give them a DJ name. Ain't nobody gotta know who they is, but they're getting their chance to hit that world of audio. So I like to say a really good idea for people who want to do podcasts with their kids or their grandkids, as I had one lady tell me, is to do an audio podcast. Well, all podcasts are audio, but to do a podcast that basically, what did we call it? Audio history or oral history podcast. And when I say oral history, I mean that is 2021, and there's a lot of family members, a lot of people in our family, and a lot of them are passing, a lot of them are getting old. But those stories that's embedded in their thoughts and their minds, those stories need to be recorded. And not only do they need to be recorded, it would be a great idea to record those stories and to get those recordings with your kids. Not only are they learning new stories and learning lessons from their grandparents and mothers, their aunties, their uncles, or whatever stories from anybody in their family, those stories are going to live forever. They're going to be out here in the world forever. Once a podcast is out in the world, it doesn't get deleted. Okay. It stays on the RSS feed forever. The chain doesn't break, it doesn't get deleted. It's going to be there forever. Okay. So definitely creating some type of podcast with your kid that does oral history is a really, really good idea. See, I just gave you free game. Free 99. So that's a good idea right there. You could call it what you want because guess what? In the oral history podcast, everybody's oral history is going to be different. Every single family member and every single story you get is going to be different. And it's going to be so entertaining for kids. I mean, so entertaining. Trust me when I say this. So when you get famous, make sure you mention my name, Deprina. Deprina told you. Okay. So another thing I always like to tell people is start getting into the podcasting. Make sure you start to listen to more podcasts. You follow other podcasts and you join podcast groups or whatever the case may be, because that's how you stay in that space. You stay into something that relates to what you are doing. It's just what you do. It's like I'm a journalist, so I'm part of you know the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm in media. I'm part of production assistant groups. I'm part of PA groups. I do like videography and TV and video. I'm in those groups. I'm in a YouTube group because I'm a YouTuber. So all these things that you want to do is, if you're a podcaster, you want to make sure you engage in that podcast space, because when you engage in a podcast space, you already know that that's your audience. Podcasters listen to podcasts. So that's your audience. That's your first audience. Your second audience is the people you're trying to pull in. So that brings me to my next topic. And my final topic, how to book a guest. So one of the most popular types of podcasts is a podcast where you have a guest or you are interviewing people. So the interview podcast, I would say. This is not to say that if you don't have somebody to interview, your podcast won't be great. Trust and believe. It ain't always all that. It's just the reason why podcasts where you are interviewing somebody is good is because when you interview somebody, you have just added a brand new audience to your podcast. For example, I'm little old me, I'm little old Pre-Nadine. But let's say I grab my husband and I want to interview him or have him on a podcast. Anybody in his network, in his journalism network, or maybe at his job, he shares a podcast with them, then have expanded my network. It's like if I interview Oprah, come on, everybody gonna know. I'm gonna be on her favorites list. So that's how you got to think of it when it comes to interview podcasts, and that's the only reason why it's popular is because you add in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 audiences every time you interview another person. But that's why the second most popular podcast is ones that's where it's 2 people or 3 people, because each of you guys are hosting, consistently hosting, and you all have different audiences that you can bring to the table. So I'm just going to run down my list of ways that you can, get a guest on your show. So one of the number one reasons, take two. I be talking so much, y'all. The number one way that you can get a person to be on your podcast, or how to find your guests or whatever, is start from a list of your current friends and the current people that are your connections. And when I say that, we all have friends, we all have connections, and they all have to relate to something, or something where we're doing already. So again, I like to use my friends as examples. For example, my friend Shanita, if she has a arts and crafty podcast, right, where she's talking about business and using the crafts to create new lines of business or whatever, trust and believe she got a lot of friends in that space, a lot of people in that space, and she can interview them. They're going to bring their audience, and then they're going to be introduced to her, and then everybody's audience is just intertwined. So you want to start from the current people that you know, current friends that you have that can relate to a particular topic that you're going to be talking about in your podcast, and then bam, you got you a guest. Ain't nobody got to know that that's your best friend from 18 years ago. Ain't nobody got to know that that's your cousin, sister, second cousin, twice removed. But it's a guest. And you are leveraging your friends and current connections that you have that relate to what you do. Number two, you want to make sure you attend industry events. Like this is what I just was talking about. So go to industry events, virtual events online, and they have a lot of these, y'all. Don't sleep on it. Networking events, podcast fest, and especially Clubhouse. Before I even got on this video, I was in a Clubhouse room where they was talking about monetization again. I already know about monetization, but it don't hurt to know a little bit more about how to monetize. Like I always say, one of my favorite quotes, always have a thirst for knowledge, you guys. The more thirst for knowledge, the more you can grow and the bigger you can become. So attend those industry events, groups, leverage anything and everything that have something to do with podcasts or your particular podcast space. So join in those exercise groups or weight loss groups or whatever. Because if I'm talking about weight loss, then I probably might want to interview somebody in that group that lost a lot of weight. Maybe I want to interview a bariatric surgeon that might be in that group, or somebody that's a workout fitness guru in that group. I just expanded my whole network. I got somebody to interview for the whole year. So that's how you got to look at it. Next up on my list is, now this one, I researched this one, and this is pretty good. Find authors of upcoming books and ebooks. Yes, y'all. So you can go on Amazon, see what books are out there, what books are coming out or already out, and those book topics probably relate to your podcast. You can actually look for their name, search their information, or go to their Instagram page and be like, look at here, look at here. You just came out with an ebook about self-care. I got a self-care podcast. My audience is about 400. You can promote your new book on it. I'm going to show snippets of it on my Instagram. Let me interview you. They 9 times out of 10 they going to say yes, because anybody just coming up with a book, especially if they're not known like that, they going to say yes. They're going to get whatever free publicity they can get in the number one free publicity right now is podcasting. Like nobody pays to go on. Like that is a dead set rule. You do not pay to go on nobody podcast, and don't let nobody try to make you pay them to get on podcast, and you don't charge people to go on their podcast, because being on others' podcasts or them being on your podcast is a mutual transaction that happens there. So you don't that's not what you do. Anybody ever try to do that, they a scammer, because you're just gaining an audience from me being on your podcast, or I'm gaining an audience from me being on your podcast, whatever the case may be. So that's not something that you charge people for. Don't be a hustler, man. Don't be a hustler. Next thing on my list, I thought this one was pretty smart too. I researched this one because, I like to research. So this one is to basically search for a podcast that's related to yours, and then ask the host of that podcast to be on your podcast. So 9 times out of 10, there isn't a space that hasn't been tapped into in podcasts. Um, they all are similar, but they all are different. So trust and believe. Everybody know most of the stuff I'm telling you right now. The number one way to grow your podcast is to be a guest on somebody else's podcast and have others as a guest on your podcast. It's the one free publicity thing you can do. So find other podcasts. If I got a podcast that's about life lessons, and let's say one of my episodes I'm talking about sex, guess what? I'm gonna find a sex podcast and I'm gonna ask that girl, can I interview you on my podcast about sex? She gonna promote my episode. I'm gonna promote the hell out of her episode, and we just expanded our network. Bada bing, bada boom. The next one is be a blog sleuth. Yes, y'all. I don't know why, but I feel like I wanted to say that word. But when I say be a blog sleuth, I mean be a stalker. Find those blogs that relate to the things that you are talking about, those things that you are discussing, and ask those people to be on your podcast. They are going to be more than willing to be on your podcast because they could promote their blog. They could promote their podcast. Whatever it is, search for them blogs that relate to what you're talking about and ask those people to be on your podcast. Good example. If I had a mommy podcast, because I don't know, I never was a mama, but I'm talking about mama stuff and kid stuff, and I'm just, I don't know, curious about the mama life. Guess what? I'm about to go to one of these mommy blogs. I'm gonna ask one of these mamas about changing diapers. And guess what? We about to have a whole chat about disposable diapers, reusable diapers, diaper rashes. We gonna talk. So that's an example of being a blog sleuth. Finding blogs that relate to your podcast and asking them, hey, come on over here and let me interview you, girl. Next up is find other podcasters that you already know online. Maybe they are big, but start to follow them. Follow them a lot, like their posts, share their posts so they can know you, get to know your name, and, vice versa. Kind of become that e-friend. Like create those e-friend relationships, and they might come on your podcast too. Because sometimes it's kind of weird to just like reach out to people, have them on your podcast, and then you have like these awkward moments like, oh, I don't know this girl, but she know this stuff and I want her to be on my podcast, but we don't want to be sitting here looking dumb. But if you've already created an friendship with them where you guys chat back and forth, you always reply to their stuff, you make meaningful and meaning comments on their stuff, then they're gonna kind of already know you already gonna be feeling comfortable talking to them. If you've been on the internet for a long time like me, you know what I'm talking about. Those friendships where, oh girl, your best friend, even though y'all never seen each other in person, but she's still your girl. Like, is it because y'all always be liking each other's stuff online? You had to be there. You understand? You had to be there. So next up is, let's see, create benefits of being on your show. So a lot of people like to create like an email list, or they say, if you be on my show, then I will, feature a snippet on my YouTube channel that has 4,000 follows. I will feature you on my Instagram page and share your product or something to my story, or you could come on my podcast and we can talk about XYZ. And then you can promote your book, and I will promote your book and your Instagram handle in my info box. That's free promo. People love it. You can do it. Add those little incentives that people can get if they are a guest on your show. Don't be afraid to inbox people. Do not be inbox people before they get popular. Now, what that means is, for example, our podcast, Kisses and Conversations, this guy decided that he wanted to look for a wife online. He turned out to be, but he was looking for a wife online, and his video, his post went viral almost. Well, it basically did went viral because he said his sales on his shop went up. All these girls was in his inbox, and he had chose one girl, but broke up with the girl over text. He gave us a whole thing about how he was looking for a girl, and Jesus was sending him a girl and all this other stuff just to finally get a good girl, but they didn't see eye to eye, I guess, after a few weeks, and he broke up with her through text because she was in our inbox. It was a whole lot of drama there, but we found him online, and it was a really good story right before it went viral. We started seeing him getting a lot of likes, and we end up interviewing for our podcast. Then there was this other girl named Lily. I follow her on Instagram now, but she found a boyfriend, a date on Bumble during the pandemic last year, like April, as soon as we had a pandemic, and they were dating and they found each other. And she made this whole, TikTok that went super millions and viral. We end up grabbing her, interviewing her, and so like try to, see those people that you think or see might be viral or might look like they can go viral, and leverage that information. Know what's what, and you can get those people to be on your podcast. So later on in the week, y'all know, like I like to do, I will create kind of like an email outline or PDF, and I'm gonna drop it in the files folder at the top, a little to the right. I'm going to drop a file folder in there to give you guys an example of an email that you guys can send out with people, and also another source because Podcast Magazine, go sign up for it. It's free. Podcast Magazine actually has a list of about 100, 200 people that are freely waiting for you to contact them to be on your podcast from all industries, from doctors, pediatricians, to health experts, mental health, or whatever. Podcast Magazine literally keeps a full directory of people that you could contact to be on your podcast. And I think that's such an amazing idea. Use that list. So I am going to upload those resources later on in the week. So look out for those. Also, let me know where you guys are at in your podcast throughout the week, because now I have homework for you. Your homework is, at this point in the game, if you've reached video 4, you definitely should be working on the first 3 topics of your podcast. You should be completely writing out your intro. Remember, your intro is who you are, what you do, why you create this podcast, what listeners can expect from this podcast, and so on. It should be under 10 minutes. It's a short version of an introductory episode, and then you should be writing down your next episodes. So, like I told y'all in the first video, I am creating a podcast with you. I am practicing what I preach. And here's my proof. Let me grab my pillow. Here is my proof. This is what I call a podcast notebook. Just a dollar notebook from the dollar store. Everything in here is just a handwritten notes, because usually handwritten notes you can remember, but the e-notes, I like to call them, like the PDF files and stuff, is stuff that you can use online while you're reading. But stuff like this is stuff, every time I come up with an episode, I write it down. I am practicing with my, do y'all see that? I have already created 32, my first 32 episodes. They're going to be evergreen, so they're going to live online forever, and they don't have to relate to something that just happened, so they don't have to be instant news topics. They're just topics, and I have over 32 topics here. Yeah, some on the back. 32 topics here. If I'm producing my podcast every other week, and let's say I got a summer break and a Christmas break, I got an 18-month podcast, y'all. Quit playing games with you. I got a 14-month podcast. I got a year and a half, whatever, podcast. That's how you be efficient. And you can just record those episodes every other month on Saturday, record 5 or 6 episodes, and go on with your life. You'll be like, oh yeah, girl, I do. Only thing you gotta worry about is promoting. Again, you guys, work smarter, not harder. So your homework that you need to be working on, if you haven't started already, at this point, you on video 4. You need to already have your topic done. You need to already have your icon completed, and you need to be working on these episodes because I'm ready to hear somebody's podcast. I mean, what are you doing? I'm waiting. So get on that homework. If you are just now watching this and you haven't watched the other videos, go back and watch those videos. Download those files. Look at your guides. Get all this information I'm giving you for free. And if you have any questions, make sure you let me know in the comments. Do you see any questions in the comments? I got my PA here monitoring my comments. So if you guys have any comments, you can let it rip now. I'll give it a second. So if you guys ask any questions later on, I will be in the comment section later on. I will reply to those comments, and you guys can let me know what you think about this video. Is there any information that I am missing out on that you haven't got yet? Only if you've already watched the other 3 videos, because I probably already said it again, because y'all, I could talk a lot. I mean, if you want me to, I'll sit here and talk all night, you know. I mean, what y'all want to talk about next? But I ain't gonna do that to you. I ain't gonna do that to you. So, thanks for watching this video, you guys. We are going to get out of here. When I say we, I be me and my wonderful husband, production assistant. And we are going to be out of here, guys. Thanks for watching, and deuces.